have breaking news into our 3 TV newsroom. I'm Nicole Kreitz, and we want to break into programming to bring you a police pursuit that has been happening for at least the last half hour right now. A high-speed pursuit. State troopers started along State Route 85, and now they're eastbound along I-10. And we have our Penguin Air and Plumbing news chopper up above the scene. Ferguson is up there, and you're following this red Jeep that troopers are trying to get to pull over. What can you tell us, Jerry?
This all started on the State Route 85, and it looks like this, again, it's this maroon-colored Jeep. DPS, it should be noted, has backed off since they've entered the Phoenix area here, but they are still following this individual just at a distance. The sheriff's helicopter is also overhead. And we're told, just based on scanner traffic, it sounds like the individual inside is a white male, appears to be a single occupant in this vehicle. At times approaching 100 miles an hour. Right now he's driving about 75 miles an hour, and right now he's eastbound on I-10 in the West Valley, around, let's see, Avondale Boulevard. So that's what it looks like right now from the Penguin Air and Plumbing news chopper.
Okay, Jerry, thanks so much. And he's going to provide the pictures here while we kind of give you a little background if you're just joining us right now. State troopers are trying to get the driver in this car to pull over. For what, we're not sure, but it came across our scanners about 10 o'clock straight up, and we're giving you kind of a wide vantage point as troopers are kind of following from a distance here, as we're told that we've been listening over the scanners that this driver in the red Jeep with the racing stripe, the black racing stripes, kind of in the center of your screen right here, has been kind of speeding in and out of traffic, swerving around cars, always on the freeway. It started south and east of the valley along State Route 85. Troopers threw down some stop sticks around milepost 148 on State Route 85. Then I guess he swerved around them and didn't stop him, and started eastbound on I-10. They attempted to throw down some stop sticks as well once he got onto I-10, but apparently that didn't slow him down at all. You heard Jerry Ferguson explaining that he was topping speeds of 100 miles an hour, and so we've just been following this, and you're joining me here now on the desk here.
Well, the good news is that there's not a lot of traffic out there, so hopefully it's safe for other drivers, because had it been earlier in the morning when sometimes these chases happen, or in rush hour at night, can be so dangerous, especially when there are swerving lanes and driving a lot faster than the rest of the traffic. But it looks like right now that red vehicle is going about the same speed as the other vehicles out there. So I'm assuming that the troopers will maybe back off, let him calm down a little bit so he doesn't make any erratic or stupid moves to injure somebody else.
Yeah, and we see chases very frequently in the LA, the California area, not so commonly in the Valley. Scott Passmore is joining me now here. Of course, we've been following this for some time, and as soon as we hear something on our scanners, we make calls to law enforcement to try to get the details of what's going on. But of course, news media is not their priority. They're trying to stop this guy and bring this to a peaceful ending. So they've kind of put us on hold. We are making calls to actively figure out what it was that those troopers tried to pull this car over for in the first place. And again, early on, we understand that the troopers were, they hit the lights and siren, tried to get him to pull over. They threw down the stop sticks. He's averting their every move. So again, like you mentioned, they're pulling back at this point and using, Jerry was saying, they're using assistance from Maricopa County helicopter to kind of watch this from a distance. You make a really good point here. He's not driving. In fact, he might be driving a little slower than the semi, who likely has no idea that troopers are trying to stop the driver in this Jeep to his left.
And once the helicopters get up, I mean, there's no way they can avoid that. They can't outrun a helicopter. They can't outrun a radio. So they always end up getting caught most of the time, as we always see, especially in the Los Angeles area. So, yeah, he's actually, looks like going a little bit slower than the semi. Semis practically never speed. So is Jerry Copper? Can you talk to us, Jerry?
I think he is standing by to get details of what's happening. But as this moves into the valley, certainly there's going to be, it's up the ante for troopers to try to bring this to a peaceful resolution, because as you get into more populated, a metropolitan area, he could take any exit and then immediately you're going to hit heavy traffic, and that could be very dangerous. So again,
is he on the west side of town?
He's on the west side of town. So this is I-10, and we've seen
downtown Phoenix.
they were passing through the Avondale Boulevard exits as last we talked to Jerry Ferguson just moments ago. So as they're headed into the valley, coming from the west side, which typically has a little less traffic as it is, we were told through scanner traffic from observation from law enforcement that it appears that there's just a single occupant, the driver, a male driver behind the wheel of this car. And what he did or what he's accused of doing, we don't know at this point. But again, law enforcement tried to stop him. He did not stop. And that all went down about a half an hour ago.
Let's get back up to Jerry. He's in the chopper following this thing, obviously. Jerry, how many troopers behind him right now?
Let me show you what that looks like. It looks like at least a dozen DPS troopers. They're in marked and unmarked vehicles behind him. So the sheriff's helicopter is also up there, as well as some at least one sheriff's vehicle SUV behind him. So they're still following. Everything has kind of slowed down as they've gotten into town here. And they're coming up on 75th Avenue, still continuing, though, eastbound along I-10 toward the downtown area.
So obviously there's enough troopers behind him that he knows he's being chased, and they want him to pull over.
Oh, he knows.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, as he gets closer to downtown in the tunnel, even around the noon time, here it's only 10:30, it still gets crowded down there. So he's going to hit some traffic as he gets closer to Phoenix, unless he takes I-17 north. And tries to go north.
There are a lot of routes that he could take here, a lot of variables, so always law enforcement, as Jerry Ferguson mentioned, that's why they have marked units, and that's also why they have unmarked units, so that they can, if the marked units need to peel back and give him some space, that those unmarked units can continue to follow him. Clearly, we mentioned the choppers overhead, so that's going to be the best vantage point. We're getting our first, like, real close, the closest we've seen so far overhead, and from what we've heard, and again, we're just waiting to still get confirmation from law enforcement, but some of the scanner traffic that we've heard so far is that this is someone they've had contact with in the past.
Okay.
It's a man that they're talking with who they've had contact with in the past, and reportedly he said things to the likes of, I don't have to pull over, it's illegal. Again, we don't know the circumstances of why they even tried to do that in the first place, but that he appears to be the sole occupant of this vehicle. I can't even tell. Can you make out, are those California plates, Scott?
It's hard to
It's really hard to tell because there's so many personalized plates here in Arizona, but it looks like a lighter plate, not a typical Arizona plate, so it's really hard to tell where that vehicle is coming from. You know, there are many reasons. Whether the plates came back and it's not matching with the driver or something along those lines.
Most of the time they are stolen vehicles, but if they've had conversation with him in the past, I'm guessing that would not be the reason.
Right. So
it's hard to say.
We're just waiting to see. But again, it did not start on I-10. If you're just joining us now, it started south and east of the valley along State Route 85, and something happened there where they tried to stop him, and he has refused to pull over. So this. Going from State Route 85 now heading into the downtown area, you never know how much gas is in the tank, so that's another variable that law enforcement is like, okay, we do have time on our hands, and I think that's always a thing. If they up the ante and move in and do some kind of tactical move where they're forcing the issue, forcing him off the road, or trying to pit move something, if it gets to be that he's coming into a more populated area at this point, I think they're just, apparently they said that they have seen him talking on a cell phone, so unsure if he's talking to law enforcement, and maybe they might be trying to negotiate at this point, or if he's having some kind of contact with a family or friend who might be trying to advise him, hopefully, to pull over here.
Well, if he was doing 90 miles an hour, upwards of 100 earlier, like was reported, he's certainly not now, so that's the best thing we can say for the other vehicles out on the road. He's not really doing anything stupid or erratic and putting other drivers into danger. So that's the good part, and that could be because the troopers have backed off. Like Jerry just said, there's a dozen or so troopers behind him, so he obviously knows they're back there, but they're not up there trying to surround the vehicle to slow him down.
He's speeding up a bit there,
a little
Scott,
bit,
because he's bypassing the semis at this point, but nothing like double timing it. I'm trying to get a vantage point of what exits we're passing at this point. Jerry, if you can hear us, can you pipe in and let us know about where? Okay, can you guys in the booth give us any idea if you've seen it on the reader boards or anything like that? We're trying to give you a little bit of a vantage point to see exactly where, and it'll give you a sense of how quickly this is moving into the valley. But as he did, Okay, 51st Avenue area.
So he's probably, well, there's a truck passing him there. I think what you're seeing is a lot of the other vehicles slowing down because they see the troopers with their lights on behind them.
That's true.
And so he was just passed by a truck on the left there. But so he's literally 3 or 4 miles before he gets to downtown and goes under the overpass. The exit to go north on I-17 is right there around, what is that, 35th Avenue or something. So if he doesn't make this next exit, then he is going to go downtown and under the tunnel.
Oftentimes what happens in situations like this, they're looking at his behavior so far. When he crossed from the 85 onto 10, then they can anticipate and work enforcement agencies. So state troopers are synced up with other law enforcement. So, okay, this is moving from Buckeye into Phoenix, could potentially hit into Tempe or Mesa. So they're talking with law enforcement ahead of time before they get into their jurisdiction, and they're getting assistance and having those officers kind of stand by at the ready at those exits. So this could be coordination we're not seeing or hearing or privy to behind the scenes that's happening, where they're setting up with troopers several exits down the way, or however many miles down the way, so that they can coordinate an area where they might be safer for them than others, to throw down some stop sticks before, again, it hits to that downtown Phoenix core, and giving him more opportunities to exit and quickly get into, you know, a parking garage or other highly populated areas where he could run out, ditch the vehicle, and then it becomes a scary situation.
But at the same time, if he is obeying the laws right now, like it looks like he is, other than, of course, not stopping and not pulling over, if he's not putting other drivers in danger, I think they'll remain calm and stay behind him so as to not get him riled up and start speeding again.
I'll say one thing that was really interesting. It wasn't too long ago, just within the last year or so, DPS troopers were doing, it was an early evening commute pursuit, and it was out in the East Valley. Similar to this, they had a guy who was just refusing to stop. We didn't know the circumstances, but they worked with troopers to set up stop sticks near an overpass, which was very interesting tactical move. They set up stop sticks. They were able to send out troopers ahead of time to clear the freeway. That's when you see them kind of swerving in and out and forcing other drivers off the road. Very, very far ahead of where the pursuit is actually in progress. So they clear the freeway, so all you have is the suspect vehicle and law enforcement. Then they were able to get him to hit the stop sticks, and they got him into custody under the overpass, out of cover of news helicopters, which was really interesting, because they're making sure, okay, we want to tactically take this guy down, not give away any secrets of how we're doing that and maneuvering that. But that was like textbook. It was wonderful. They've done a million of these pursuits before, and it's not very common to see it here in the Valley.
Well, he just passed the I-17 turnoff to head north, so he's going to be going under the overpass, the Margaret T. Hansub Deck Park here next. We understand that they're trying to get stop sticks ahead of him, but like you were talking about, it's difficult to do because you've got all those other vehicles out on the freeway, so to get him in the lane that he's in without other cars hitting the stop sticks is extremely difficult to do. So we'll see what they do here. But right now there are about a dozen or so. Jerry, can you have anything new to add to all of this?
Yeah, Jerry Ferguson. Okay.
This maroon Jeep with the racing stripes being pursued by Arizona DPS officers and the Sheriff's Office. On 3, copy.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry. We've got you.
Jerry, can you hear us? I know he's trying to multitask.
Yeah,
up there. There's so much going on. Yeah, give us the latest rundown. We're heading into the downtown area.
That's right. Let me zoom out here, and while still maintaining a shot of where he's at, downtown area at the top of the screen here. So that's approaching the downtown area. I'll zoom right back down to where this individual is at. DPS still following at a distance. We do still see them back there. If I zoom out, we kind of lose where he's at. You can still see the maroon vehicle there. Still several car lengths behind this vehicle, but yeah, he's still going. And just continuing eastbound I-10, we'll see. So far, he's stayed in the middle lanes, and it looks like he's just bound to continue on I-10 for now.
Hey, Jerry, I'm just curious, as a fellow pilot, how are you handling the Class B airspace as you follow this guy?
Oh, it's He just went into the tunnel here. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Aaron, our pilot, is making multiple calls. It gets pretty frenetic up here in the chopper, and that's why it's good to have a separation of duties. I can do the reporting and run the camera. Aaron, all he has to do is focus on flying the helicopter. There are some other aircraft up in the air as well, another media helicopter, as well as the sheriff's helicopter down low. So, yeah, there's a lot going on.
I think he just came out of the tunnel ahead of you guys a little bit.
That's right.
Looks like he might want to. Oh, there he is, right there.
It's
actually.
even tough to keep up. Yeah, so it's the same task that law enforcement is trying to figure out, okay, when he goes into that tunnel, making sure that you catch up with him on the other side.
So now he can take a right and take I-10 east down to the Southeast Valley, or he can go straight and stay on the 202, or he can jump on the 51 and go north. So he's got a decision to make up here. It'll
be curious to see where he takes this. And Scott, you made a good point. We're well before, okay, he's heading over to the HOV lane, so could try merging off onto one of the turnoffs here. But you made a good point. We're early enough that it's not hitting that lunchtime crowd. But coming up on 11 o'clock, and at least there's less traffic on the roadway than there would be otherwise.
And oftentimes these guys have no idea where they're going. They're just driving. I mean,
looking for an out.
You know, he probably is trying to figure out what to do at this point. Obviously, does not want to pull over. Maybe he's on the phone. Maybe somebody, family members, telling him to pull over and be smart about this. I don't know. Maybe the troopers are talking to him if they know who this is. But it looks like he's just driving. At the moment, he's not really speeding. He's just driving down the freeway. So will he take the 202 and head to the East Valley, or will he go south or north? We're about to find out. But it looks like, well, he's turning over, and he
still could split to the 51 or the 202 at this point.
If he misses it, yeah, he's actually going to, I think, I think he's just going to stay in and go on the 202.
It looks like it. Yeah. If you're just joining us right now, we're breaking into regular programming to bring you this high-speed pursuit. DPS troopers have been following this red Jeep for now the last 40 minutes or so. It's followed from State Route 85 south and west of the valley to 10 eastbound, and now he's just exited onto the Loop 202. Freeway here, headed in towards, this is going to be coming up on the Tempe core in just a little bit here. We have just confirmed that the plates are California plates, so we don't know a lot about the person who's driving this vehicle, but what we're told by law enforcement is this: it's a single occupant, a male driver with glasses. He's on his cell phone, and again, like we said, we don't know if he's talking to law enforcement. They're trying to negotiate some kind of peaceful surrender here, or if he's talking to other family members, or just trying to find a way to get out of this situation, because you got a chopper overhead. There's just no getting out of this. He's going to have to come in contact with law enforcement.
Yeah, you're right about that. He apparently has avoided some stop sticks. He was speeding earlier, although right now he is pretty much obeying the speed limit, and he's staying in one lane. He's not driving erratically whatsoever. So I think the troopers are probably going to just take their time and make sure that he stays safe, and their biggest job is so that nobody else gets hurt, obviously.
So early on, probably pushing almost an hour ago, they did see him making some erratic lane changes, and we were seeing speeds topping 100 miles an hour, and that's when troopers in marked units were hot on his tail. But as you can see, they've pulled back considerably. They're using the assistance of a Maricopa County helicopter up above, along with our news choppers, to kind of follow things along.
We want to get back up to Jerry. He's in the Penguin Air and Plemmy news chopper. He's following this, and Aaron's the pilot this morning. Jerry, it looks like it's going to stay on the freeway.
That's right, yeah, and that's going to cause us a little bit of an issue as we come up to the Sky Harbor Airport. That's a dicey situation to get around the airliners that are landing if he continues on this 202 over toward the 60. Not sure exactly where he's going to go, but coming up on another transition here, we'll see where he goes. Let me zoom out here and show you. That's the, what is that, the 143 coming up on that. Looks like he's going to stay straight.
Yeah, once he gets around the curve up there on the 202 and then heads around by Tempe Town Lake, that's where you guys have to be careful, because the airliners are coming in right above you.
Yeah, not only us, but also the MCSO helicopter. it doesn't really matter for the MCSO helicopter. They've got priority, and if they need to follow him, I'm sure air traffic control will certainly let them do that, and it's very difficult to escape the gaze of the police helicopters.
That and the radio, and you said there were about a dozen troopers behind him. Does it look like any other agencies have joined in, or is it just DPS at this point?
We saw at least one sheriff's department cruiser back there, so that it looks like the sheriff's department is also participating in this pursuit.
And Jerry, can you tell us a little bit, Scott was alluding to it, when you hit up on the airport traffic, what do you have to do? How far do you have to give a girth to the flight patterns?
Well, obviously, if it depends on which direction the airplanes are taking off and landing, but let me zoom out here and show you where we're at in relation to the airport. We're turning that curve, headed down toward the airport, and right now, my pilot Aaron is negotiating with or making calls out to air traffic control and coordinating our positioning so that we're not getting in the way of airliners, we're not impeding any of that traffic, and that we're also not messing up the MCSO helicopter. So we're above them.
And I'm guessing you're probably going to have to stay north of the freeway once he makes the turn. The jetliners come in basically right over Tempe Town Lake, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they come right in. In fact, the jetliner, as I zoom out here, he's getting right up to about where that airport is right now. The airliners would be just coming right down over the top of them, but we've still got a pretty long lens on the chopper here, and we should be able to still track him all the way around the curve.
That's some interesting insight, and it shows you kind of what's happening parallel with law enforcement and the MCSO helicopter and all the things that go on behind the scenes to make sure that this is tracked and watched in the appropriate fashion. And we're seeing, again, this SUV that has been cutting across town through multiple cities up to 100 miles an hour, and just this single male driver and no one else in the vehicle here, but law enforcement's been trying to get him to stop now. It's started around just after 10 this morning, so not a lot of traffic still as we head into Tempe and pass through the Phoenix area. That was even, better than expected.
I understand why the troopers want to stay behind him, because they want to keep this driver calm, and if he's just going to drive on the freeway and hopefully pull off at some point, then they can try to nab him and pull him over. But I'm kind of surprised with him going the speed limit or even slower that they haven't tried to pull up next to him to maybe gesture or maybe get a vehicle in front of him to try that tactic and see if that works.
Which almost makes you wonder if he is in contact with them. So we know that he has a cell phone. He's been seen talking on the cell phone, unknown if that's to family or friends or to law enforcement trying to negotiate an end to this. But they do know, what we're hearing is that they do know who they're dealing with in this vehicle, that they have had run-ins with. He has had run-ins with law enforcement before. The plate's coming back out of California. Unknown if they're coming back stolen or what kind of hit they got on this to begin with. We're making calls to try and see how this traffic stop was initiated in the first place, why they tried pulling over this driver to begin with. But clearly he didn't want to, and at some point we're hearing that he said he didn't have to pull over because it's illegal. So again, we're not sure of the circumstances that led up to that reported exchange, but that they do know who they're dealing with. And so there have been two sets of stop sticks, one on State Route 85 that he swerved and missed, and another when he got onto I-10. Since he's been onto I-10 and since it's merged over to the Loop 202, we haven't seen any attempts by law enforcement to throw down more stop sticks. Now there's Tempe Town Lake here. He's moving through, and he's going to cut through Tempe pretty quickly if we continue at this pace. Oh, he's getting off the freeway.
He actually got off at Rural there, and obviously around the university, Rural Road can be very busy, so we'll see what he does at the bottom of this exit here, whether he takes a right and heads into Tempe, which it looks like he is about to do. So he'll head, well, unless he's starting to cut. Now he turned back left. No, he's... Okay, so he's going to turn right here.
Yeah, which would be headed down into the ASU area.
Yeah, he's going to...
What I'm surprised is typically when you have pursuits like this that continue for some distance along the freeway, you might have troopers who are standing by, waiting at exits in case he should take that exit. I didn't see any marked units, but again, there could be unmarked units that have been kind of standing by on the periphery. And now we're into some kind of construction there that we saw.
There's a lot of construction up and down Rural Road around the university.
So that could change up his behavior of a typical, there's no such thing as behavior of a typical pursuit suspect, but that could add another layer of an unintended variable that police have to deal with.
And as he heads over Tempe Town Lake, he's going to obviously start hitting a lot of stoplights, which is another opportunity for the troopers to close in and try to box him in at an intersection. There's a lot of students on bicycles, a lot of students walking around in crosswalks, so they obviously have to be very careful. But here's one of those lights at Rio Salado, and
he's not swerving to get around anyone.
He's not trying to run lights. He's just obeying the traffic right now.
So you got to imagine.
And there's a car blocking him in, and it looks like,
okay, they've got a couple.
They actually hit him with a van. And now he's on the run.
And he's
obviously
busted through that light because you could see everyone was stopped there. So, yeah, it looked like an actual law enforcement. They had a big SUV there that tried to box him in, and then the other one tried to clip him in on the other side, actually hit his passenger side, his rear passenger side. Now he's speeding away from them.
So this is what they were afraid of, him running through lights. There he just ran through a light, and now he's speeding. So this is what they did not want to happen. So I would imagine they're probably going to back off again. Is this guy... Now, look at him. He's just going in the wrong lane. He's flying through these intersections. My goodness, and we just lost our picture there.
We apologize, but it's a breaking news situation, so we do also have it. We keep it on a delay for you.
He just rolled. He just had a head-on collision. We've got this shot behind us, and I don't know if you can see it, but...
we keep things on a delay just because we're not sure of the circumstances of how things are going to play out, and we want to make sure that we're very sensitive to how things are
Can we take that shot from the helicopter?
Let's see if we can take that.
So the guy has climbed out, and he's out on the sidewalk.
He's running.
Can we take this shot?
There we go. There he is.
We do have...
And it looks, he wasn't injured in that accident. Hands up. You can see him screaming to some people. I haven't seen any law enforcement close in here. He's reaching down for a shoe, but not... Doesn't look like he has anything in his hands. Okay, it looks like they're approaching him.
So what you didn't see is his vehicle actually rolled, and he was able to get out of that, and now he's talking to other people, and of course they don't know that he's law enforcement, but now they've come in, and there'll be guns drawn as they try to take this guy down.
Full guns drawn, coming up. So was that not... It's hard to know. Okay.
They thought that maybe he was in the vehicle, and now they're taking him down.
They're taking him down pretty hard.
And...
getting him
they've got this
to the ground, and clearly, it looked like he had his hands up. I didn't see anything in his hands. There was some confusion because law enforcement didn't witness that rollover, so they didn't know that that was him out of the vehicle. But as soon as they realized it was just within seconds, they were able to pounce.
We need to find out if he hit another vehicle.
That was really hard to see.
I think it's possible that he did.
Yeah, to be safe, we popped away from the live feed for you, but. He hit head-on another vehicle. Can we get any vantage point of that other vehicle? I don't know. I mean, obviously, we want to see what's happening here with the takedown of the suspect, but it looks like that's not going to change here. Can we see that other vehicle? Can Jerry Ferguson even pull out a little bit?
Well, you can see that the officers, they've got him surrounded. They've got him cuffed. They also have a canine. They've got a canine dog there. And there's the Maricopa County helicopter. There is the carnage in the intersection. He ran through that red light and hit that other vehicle, either head-on or T-boned him. And that, of course, is what officers did not want to happen. So
yeah, and you can see, I think we're going to listen in. Is Jerry Ferguson giving a little bit of a debrief here? We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we're just trying to bring you the latest in this breaking news situation.
Yeah, copy that.
Okay, Jerry Ferguson, go ahead and give us a breakdown of what you saw, because we pulled away as soon as that impact happened. Well, what did you see?
So the driver increased his speed, was driving really belligerently, crossing over into traffic, across traffic lanes, blowing through red lights, and you can see here, I don't have the cross streets, but it's along Scottsdale Road there, Rural Road, just T-boned, kind of front-end T-boned this other vehicle. Just an innocent person going about their morning and slammed full speed into this other vehicle. We still don't know whether that other person is injured or not. It looks like DPS is trying to attend to that person. I'm sure they've got medical personnel already on the way. The vehicle rolled a number of times and came to rest just outside of this business here, the driver miraculously, the suspect miraculously was able to crawl out of that vehicle and then went over and started talking to some bystanders, trying to, I don't know, fool them into thinking that it wasn't what they were seeing or something. As DPS approached, he pointed at the vehicle as if to say, hey, go get him. There's a guy in there. And DPS was not fooled. They tackled him, and he's in custody now there on the ground.
Well, Jerry, the shame of the bad part of this is that innocent vehicle in the intersection, like you talked about. That was the reason troopers were staying behind, so he would not speed and run through intersections. And when they tried to close in on him at that red light, that's exactly what he did. He took off, and that is a result of that. So that's the really sad part of this. And, of course, he walked away. He wasn't even hurt.
Okay, and our web team has been streaming this live, and they've already put ahead a clip of the actual collision on our website, azfamily.com, if you want to go and click and check out, how this pursuit came to an end. But as we're looking at these live images from our Penguin Air and Plumbing News chopper, they are waiting for medics to get to the scene. I haven't seen the driver of that vehicle, the innocent driver who got T-boned by our suspect, come out of that vehicle yet. But you could see troopers in there, and it appears as though that they were talking to that driver, so hopefully that person's going to be okay. We can only hope and know that the car on either side, that's when he was able to break free. They did kind of clip the back end passenger side, and that's when he just took off speeding and unfortunately had a collision with this innocent bystander here.
And we don't know how many people are in that vehicle, but they are still in there. They've not been taken out yet. But what's amazing is after he made contact with this car, the red Jeep started rolling and it ended up about a half a block down the street. And the guy was still able to jump out of there and then started talking or yelling at the people there until the troopers were able to pounce on him and make the arrest. But as Jerry moves around to the driver's side of this vehicle, obviously the driver is still in that vehicle, and they are tending to them until the ambulance shows up and emergency workers can work on him. But we don't know if it's more than one person. It looks like it's probably just the driver, the way they're talking to that person, but we hope they're going to be okay.
Yeah, that is really hard to tell exactly what the damage is, but you could see that vehicle got hit with a very hard impact. It did quite a bit of damage to the car, and they're just kind of hopefully trying to stabilize that person to see that they can get medical attention out there as quickly as possible. It's crazy, Scott. You mentioned, and we do have the actual point of impact on our website, azfamily.com. We skipped away from it because we just, in live television, we want to be safe that we're not showing anything that's as dire as what these circumstances could have turned out to be. It was pretty remarkable, as you said, that vehicle rolled several times, and the driver in the suspect vehicle popped out of the car, was walking around, running around with his hands up, didn't look like he was injured even one bit. Who knows what could be in his waistband or otherwise, what other potential threat it would be, but it certainly ups the ante. If you've got someone who's running from law enforcement, you have to consider them, the biggest threat possible. So it's great that it ended there on the sidewalk. And of course, now law enforcement's going to be figuring out what potential charges he could be facing. So we're looking at all of this playing out.
Just amazing to think that somebody would do this and not care for other people speeding through intersections. You know you're going to hit somebody when you're speeding through red lights.
Absolutely. And I think what's difficult is law enforcement can't really anticipate when you're dealing with a pursuit on a freeway and the variable of what exit he's going to take. He exited fairly shortly after deciding to go to the 202 instead of the 51. Who knows if they had troopers staged north on the 51, something along those lines. We did not see any troopers kind of standing by, but again, they could have been in unmarked units. It was an unmarked SUV that first tried to pin him in on the driver's side when he stopped at the traffic light there, and then another unmarked unit that the rear passenger side of our suspect. They've got the victim here wrapped up on a board and are trying to hustle to get to the hospital to get them the medical attention.
Well, you can see that their head is taped down to the board, which is customary to make sure that that person does not move, so they don't want to cause any more injuries to that person. But their legs are taped down to the board, and I'm sure they're hurt very badly. I mean, taking a crash like that, it's probably best that it happened on the passenger side and not the driver's side where that person was sitting. But, again, the troopers They probably didn't know what the driver was going to do, so that's why they stayed back on the freeway, just so that the person would not speed, and it worked. He didn't. And then he took the exit. And then when they tried to close in on him and actually bumped his rear bumper,
at the light.
He was obeying the law.
So
that's when the guy took off and started speeding, ran through about 2 or 3 intersections before making this collision, as that person is hauled off to the hospital.
So we've got crews on the scene, and they're efforting getting up a live shot to give us a little bit of a vantage point of what's happening there. But let's go ahead and check in with Jerry Ferguson once again on our Penguin Air and Plumbing News Shopper. Jerry.
Yeah, as they took this driver out, it looked like she was moving her arms and legs around. Hopefully that's a good sign, and we certainly hope the best for this driver. It's a little infuriating that driver, the suspect driver, just hops out of the vehicle and is running around when this is the result of his reckless actions.
Well, sometimes, Jerry, if someone is high on drugs, they don't get injured. So you never know if that person was impaired or not. That's something we'll find out, obviously, with some time. But you're right. This person, just an innocent bystander driving down the road, obeying the laws, and then here comes this knucklehead and takes him out, and then that guy is okay. But he'll be hauled off to jail, and he won't see any daylight for some time to come, that's for sure.
But he popped up and is kind of flailing his arms around. There's absolutely no injuries to him. Looks like a young guy, totally fine otherwise. And many times, law enforcement will say, when you have a collision, the person who's causing the collision very often has no injuries because of other circumstances. They're just expecting to get around it or something. It's the people who were unexpecting, who did, you know, maybe saw it happening, might have flinched before impact and could sustain the most injuries. But it is kind of maddening and bizarre to see someone putting someone in the hospital on a stretcher, sending them off to the hospital in serious condition, and then them just to be walking around fine like nothing happened.
You're right about that. That's him in the dark shirt. They are checking his blood pressure and checking his vitals, but he looks to be perfectly fine, standing up, got out of that vehicle. I think he got out of the passenger side after it rolled several times.
Might have had to crawl out, yeah.
Yeah, and they took him down, but he'll be going to jail, and boy, he's got a lot of questions to answer to on why this happened and what he was thinking.
I've seen pursuits in before, and in this kind of stage, sometimes I've seen drug recognition or other law enforcement do field sobriety tests, and we actually witnessed that. That's not necessarily going to happen here because clearly they have probable cause to arrest him anyhow for the pursuit and failure to yield and stop and all those things, but they're just in the early stages of trying to figure out what was going through his head. If they can make any sense of that, there's a possibility that they could do a field sobriety test, but likely his blood's going to be drawn anyhow.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to take a blood test. I'm sure he's not going to obey to any kind of a field sobriety test. After all, he didn't care what officers were telling him when they told him to pull over. So he obviously very reckless person and didn't care. So,
okay.
We
do have we pulled away live because we weren't sure what was going to pan out when that impact happened. But we do have footage of how this pursuit came to an end. So let's go ahead and show you that now.
Oh boy!
Crossing into oncoming
no.
traffic.
Oh no! Oh no! Head-on collision with that car, an innocent person involved in a head-on crash, and this is exactly what DPS wanted to avoid.
You can see how many times that thing rolled and all the smoke.
And he's running.
Look at that.
You can tell how fast that vehicle was going. I mean, incredible speeds. There he is waving his arms. Who knows what he's saying or yelling? You might be right. Maybe he was saying, you know, I'm the innocent person. Who knows? But then DPS officers show up in a few more seconds here, and they run over to the truck, and then they take him down very quickly.
Yeah, and it happened so quickly. We want to bring you back out to live pictures here of the aftermath of this high-speed pursuit that ended with a head-on wrong-way crash on Rural in Tempe.
So earlier this morning on Good Morning Arizona, Hector just happened to be over at Tempe Town Lake with his drone this morning, giving us live shots. So he has the drone up there, and you can see he's just behind the emergency vehicles right off Rural Road there, and we'll see if he's able to take that thing over right on top of him. They may be telling him to not to do that. But the suspect is being loaded up on a stretcher, and he'll be taken to the hospital, and they for sure will be drawing some blood to check on whether he was impaired or not. But here's our drone shot. You can see the scene, and this scene stretches for a good half a block or so.
Yeah, and if you are just joining us, the suspect vehicle, all we know at this point, it was a man, appeared to be pretty behind the wheel, himself alone, in a Jeep with plates out of California, red Jeep with plates out of California. And from State Route 85, they tried throwing down some stop sticks to get him before he connected onto eastbound I-10. He was able to get around them. They threw down some more sticks, and he was able to swerve around 2 different sets of DPS trooper stop sticks. So they tried to stop this closer to 10 this morning, and it continued for almost 45 minutes before he finally got off the freeway at the 202 at Rural, stopped at a light. That's when troopers tried pinning him in, and he was swerved around and then took off speeding. Okay, so let's take a look at the bottom of your screen here. I don't know if Jerry Ferguson can hear us, or this is actually our drone shot. Yeah, that's the drone shot, but there was it appears to be a second vehicle that might have been clipped in all of this as well.
There's also a big city bus in the intersection. Hector, if you can pan back over to that bus. I don't believe that bus was involved, but it's just blocked in there by the emergency vehicles, and it just basically has no place to go. I don't know if anybody was on that or not, but there is a black vehicle right there that may have also been involved in that. But of course, the vehicle that took the brunt of the damage is what was T-boned, and that driver has been taken to the hospital. So we will find out about that person, who they are, and their injuries, and we'll have that for you today at 4 o'clock.
Look at the aftermath.
It's terrible. It's
the
unbelievable.
Destruction here, because you could see. So this was, to put it in perspective, this was a vehicle that was headed northbound on Rural. When that suspect vehicle crossed the turn lane into oncoming traffic, you can see he had a glancing blow there on the passenger side. So you mentioned that's, you know, just by fate that it wasn't a full head-on. Even though it was a head-on, it was kind of glancing along the passenger side. Did a lot of damage there, and that driver injured severely enough that that woman had to be taken off on a stretcher.